Welcome to the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival podcast, The Journey Continues. I'm award-winning journalist Nadine Drummond, and this episode we discuss the powerful relationship between reggae music and films. We are joined by, wait for it, 3 times BAFTA award-winning cameraman Ian Watts and the legendary selector from Fifth Avenue Street Sound, Raymond Banton. If you don't know, tune in, and if you do know, you don't know where you have to do. Follow us on our socials for more. Thank you and welcome to the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival podcast, The Journey Continues. We are joined today by 2 Caribbean stalwarts, and I'll leave them to introduce themselves. Ray, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ray, Sweet Vibes they call me, from Fifth Avenue Street Sound. Been playing music for around nearly 40 years. And I'm a promoter as well. I do all white, all black day parties for our culture, and also I do a podcast myself, Set the Trend Podcast, where we talk to our DJs, former influential people within our sound culture that have given so much to the culture, and we just talk about their journey and what they did. And often they're not people who can express or have gotten to express themselves.
And Ian, please.
Yes, my name is Ian. I'm a film and TV cameraman. I've been working in the industry for more than 30 years. I work on documentaries, current affairs, films, historical films, arts films, music videos, you name it, I've done it really. And I also work as a photographer as well. In fact, I started out as a photographer, moved into the world of film and television, but even when I've been working in film and TV, I've still been taking photographs. So, for example, I've been covering things like Notting Hill Carnival for the last 40 years, and I'm still taking pictures and loving every moment of it.
So why, Ian? Why moving pictures? Why do you document our culture in that way?
I think it's because I wanted originally to be a photographer. I wanted to be a writer. That was my first interest, but I kind of didn't actually know the breaks to get into writing. So I thought, somehow or the other, I bought a camera. I started taking photographs in the community of where I was, loved what I was doing. And I've just kept on taking photographs ever since, really. But it wasn't my intention to be a photographer, but I was always interested in the arts, though. For example, I was interested in paintings and movies and all the rest of it. But I didn't really see myself as being part of that world because it was very difficult to get into the industry at the time. So photography was an easier way for me to break into the arts and media world.
Where did you grow up, Ian?
I went to school in Wembley. So I actually was born in South London, grew up in Wembley and went to school in Wembley, but kind of moved all around the northwest parts of London. So whether it's Harlesden, Willesden, Kilburn, Cricklewood, those were my hunting grounds. And then for a number of years, I lived in a place called the Chalkhill Estate in Wembley. And that was kind of where I kind of centered my life. Then later on in life, I moved to the South London, and I've been in South London for the last 25 years and would never go back to the north.
I don't belong. Listen, I don't care what people say about me. No.
South London is where it's at. And I was born in South London as well, so it's kind of like a full circle for me as well.
Whereabouts in South London were you born?
Lewisham Hospital was where I was born. So it's
Okay.
Yeah,
you're one of us then. You're Blue Borough.
One of us.
You know the story. Yeah. So South London is definitely where it's at.
I feel closer to you all. All right, Ray.
And also, as a person who grew up in the music scene as well, I've obviously heard Ray's music, but I've never met Ray before. But obviously, listening to lots of the sounds at the time. Fifth Avenue was one of those sounds that we used to hear about. So respect to Ray for the music that he's been doing, because you've been doing great works for the longest time. So full respect to you, boss.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian.
So how did you get into music, Ray? How did you become a soundman? Did you start as a box boy?
It's funny. My passion. I used to listen to music when my mum used to play on the old cassette tapes. If everybody remembers what a cassette tape is, TDK's cassette tape. But she used to play like the John Holt albums because she's of that age, and those kind of classic DJs. And I used to listen. I thought it was quite nice. I was into pop a lot because that's what was on the TV screens, pop music and that. I used to listen to some reggae shows, Radio 1. And I think BBC London had a show at Rankin Merver and so I used to listen to reggae, so it's nice. But I never really had a passion for it until I met a gentleman by the name of Tony Francis. His brother owned a sound system called Saxon, and he introduced me to Saxon. And from then, I just wanted to first be a DJ, as in chatting lyrics and whatever else, and then it moved on to having our own sound and playing music. So that's how I got the passion for it, and it was definitely from meeting up on Saxon, and then from there I met Mystery, so we got introduced to the rare grooves side of it and the soul side of it as well. And obviously coming from Blueborough, you're never far away when you talk music of having a conversation about Josh Shaka, because he's probably the biggest sound system from Lewisham, and he was just, Saxon's global, but what Shaka did was kind of global for just staying on one track of music, dub music, for all those years, and he just stayed in his lane. He didn't come off of it. It was just his one turntable and bass and everything else. And yeah, I think he just connected with so much people from so many different communities, and he went across color. He's probably one of the first sounds that got that color of white, black, Asians, and everybody coming to listen to dub music. So that was my way into the business.
So hold on. So who is Tony Francis's brother? Was that Panhead? Is it Panhead? It was Panhead, one of the Saxon men then? Who was Tony Francis's brother?
So Tony Francis, Musclehead.
Musclehead.
Lloyd Francis. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and D-Row, of course, as well. So
the boss man.
Yeah. So they were the catalyst for producing, a platform of kind of heroes to many.
So was that the time when Maxi Priest, because Maxi Priest used to be on Saxon, isn't it?
Maxi Priest, Papa Levi originally. There was
Top Cat. Was Top Cat on there?
Top Cat, not really. Top Cat used to come in, I think, do a guest spot, but you had Smiley Culture, you had Asher Senator, you had Tipper Irie, Daddy Rusty, Junior Sandy, Roger Robin.
I remember Sandy.
Never Morrison. Yeah, their platform just. Peter King, he is the first DJ, not supposed to be the first DJ that invented the fast style of rapping or chatting, as you would call it. So they've had many DJs pass through, and I've probably forgotten a few, and they'll probably have a go at me, but the list is just extensive.
Yeah, and don't forget the great Philip Levi as well.
Yeah, the only English DJ of Jamaican parents of reggae parents, that had a #1 hit in Jamaica, and he's the only UK artist to have ever done that with God McKing.
God McKing, yes.
Yeah, the only one, and he doesn't even get enough props. He paved that way for the DJs.
Well, they were so influential that the Jamaican DJs like Johnny Ringo and all the rest of them, they just started copying what was happening in the UK. That's how powerful that Saxon were in that era,
Absolutely.
So and they're still going strong now. They're powerful.
Still going strong, but But I must admit, there'd be no Saxon without Sir Coxsone. That rivalry. And I think Saxon, their aspirations was to be Coxsone. So Coxsone was kind of like the forerunners of that kind of dancehall beginning there. And they really inspired a lot. They wouldn't have said it in the beginning, and I wouldn't have said it in the beginning because it was so much rivalry. But now when you look at it, they wouldn't have been one without the other, because Saxon just so much wanted be better than Coxsone and what Coxsone were doing at the time.
And if you ever went to a dance and you saw the clashes between Saxon and Coxsone, they were legendary as well. Those clashes, I just remember them at Brixton Town Hall and places like that.
Yeah,
Saxon and
absolutely.
Coxsone, murder. It was wicked nights out.
Yeah.
So I was lucky that I was able to photograph some of the things happening in the music scene at this time. So I've got lots of early photographs of Maxi, Tipper, and Colonel, and all the rest of it from this era as well. So I was lucky that I was able to be able to capture that important history, moment in history, with Smiley as well, and a lot of other people as well.
So, what role do you think that sound systems had in shaping British Caribbean identity in the UK?
Well, they were the news. That you used to hear a lot of news from the sound systems. The sound systems used to carry the news. You used to find out what was happening from the sound systems as well. And sound systems played a very important role. In the growth of Black British culture in the UK. There wasn't many other places for people to go, so the dances where you could hear your own music, led by the sound systems, was so important. I think, as you say, Coxsone led the way, but I think the very first sound system in the UK was Duke Vin. I think Duke Vin. Yeah. I think he brought the very first sound system in about the mid-50s. I think he was the very first sound system. So the role of sounds from from Jamaica or even in the UK, bringing music that people from the UK from Caribbean background could listen to their own music was so important. So important.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to remember at that time when in the 50s when Jamaicans came over here from the Caribbean, they weren't allowed to just go into clubs. They weren't, they had to have parties or blues dances, as we would call them back in the day. Their parties, or warehouses came a bit later, but that kind of getting together, kind of that sense of community there, is where people could go and meet. And it wasn't just in London. I mean, London is where we're at, but it was big in Bristol, it was big in Birmingham, from all the, so those other locations outside of London also had a big impact on reggae music and how it formed. But Birmingham was another big location for reggae music. In fact, London and Birmingham were probably the two big rivals in sound culture, to be honest with you, back in the day.
And you had some really big sounds as well in Birmingham, like Quaker City, and which I think Benjamin Zaffanar was part of that sound system as well. And you had big sounds in Nottingham as well. Nottingham was also an important area as well. I remember hearing a story the other day that Coxsone, when they went to somewhere like Nottingham, they sort of stayed there for about 3 or 4 months because they could play every night back in the 70s and 80s or 80s. So it wasn't just London; it was a UK thing as well. The Black community all over the UK were listening to music or getting music.
They were, well, I think also you would say that they were offering a refuge from racism, alienation, marginalization in British society, and like the gatherings kind of just asserted an identity for the diaspora there within a very hostile, could be said, environment for many growing up back then.
Yeah, and so you had a sense of community by going to the dances, and really well, and also people in the dances could talk about the things that were happening in the community as well. So the dances were very important, especially when, for London-based people, you couldn't go into the West End, or very few West End clubs that you could go to, but at least you could go to the local dances where we could listen to Shaka or Coxsone or Saxon or whoever. It's so important.
So would you say that that sound system culture was part of a resistance, or would you just say it was just community building?
It was
a number. Sorry, carry on.
Well, it was to me, it was just a form. It was a form of resistance to systematic oppression, racism, and exclusion. If you listen to some of the lyrics at the time, I know that my fellow colleague here, Ian, will also remember when Papa Levi went on to David Rodigan's radio show, and he had the lyrics about Margaret Thatcher, which
yes,
which at that time,
still remember those lyrics. Still remember what he would do with Maggie.
I don't. All right, lyrics. DJ. I want to hear the lyrics. I want to hear the lyrics.
It was about drawers and charity and all the charity singles and all the rest of it. He was very perceptive. It was a very smart, amusing lyric that he had about Dirty Maggie Thatcher. Yeah,
Maggie Thatcher.
Yeah. Probably not for airplay now, but it was quite an important, amusing song at the time as well. Very amusing.
Yeah. But I mean, he wasn't the only one. I mean, if you look at a lot of reggae music, it is a form of protest against oppression. Bob Marley's, Wailers, if you listen to the Culture, there's so much other reggae artists who came up singing against, some kind of oppression, and we took up some of them as anthems where we were. So, for instance, if you look at Junior Mervyn, Police and Thieves, when the riots was going on, that was one of the songs that created a great following. I mean, it was there from before, but that song kind of encapsulated that moment. And that's one of the tunes that you just you remember those lyrics, as Ian was saying, like you never forget at the chorus line, you know what I mean, and the lyrics that go with it.
And it was popular amongst white youth as well as black youth as well. And in fact, it was so popular that the Junior Mervyn song was also covered by The Clash as well. So, reggae was crossing over into many other different cultures as well. It wasn't just for the black community. Lots of other communities started getting interested in music. And Police and Thieves was one of those big songs that had a big crossover hit for The Clash.
So which song, if you would say, I know it's hard to say one, but if you could have a song that moves you every time you hear it, what would it be for each of you? During that period, what we say the golden age, what would it be for each of you?
Can we have more than one, or is it just one?
All right, three. We'll give you three. We'll give you three. We'll give you three. Best of three.
Maybe we'll just go backwards and forwards, but my first one would probably be Burning Spear and Marcus Garvey, because I learned about Marcus Garvey from Burning Spear. So for me, Marcus Garvey, Burning Spear, classic song, classic album. That would be one of my top three of all time.
For me, around those times, I think again, and this is one of the tracks that probably blew up even more so when they had a film behind it. The Harder They Come, to Jimmy Cliff. Parents loved that song. You just couldn't get away from your parents playing it. So to me, that was one of the songs at the time growing up to.
I'd say for me, I would say it still moves me. Warrior Charge by Aswad.
Big tune, yeah.
Big tune.
And so even when I hear that now, my heart beats.
Big tune.
Yes,
yeah. Babylon.
Yeah.
Because and that's the first time I heard the tune. One of my brothers was a soul boy, so more like a soul boy. One of them was a hardcore, he turned Rasta. So there were two completely different stylists. They're completely two different styles in the house. But that was the one song that they were united on, and they had their own sound system. They used to, in those days, they used to have tweeters and whatever they had. They could play it till my mum went out, but the walls used to shake. We didn't have double glazing then, so the windows used to. It was mad. But
and I'm sure Ian will correct me if I'm wrong. Babylon, some of it was shot in Deptford.
Yes, it was. That was in 1980 movie made by an Italian film director, a man born in Italy but actually grew up in the UK, and he was Italian. Franco Rossi or Rosso, something like that. I think his name was. Yeah, he made that film in 1980, and I believe he worked with
Stelberg. It sounds
Martin Stillman. I think he co-wrote the film as well.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. He had some other history because he also made a film about the Mangrove 9 as well. So he was very much involved in Black community films anyway. He didn't just suddenly make Babylon. He was actually somebody who was invested in making films about the Black community. So I think when you see I know you've seen the film, but the film is very authentic because it was made by somebody who actually understood and knew the culture. And I think it was quite an important film at that time, and it still stands the test of time as well, because it was portraying what was happening at that time. We're talking about sound systems. Shaka, for example, is in that film as well. And Shaka, as we say, the one turntable man was still doing it in 1980, and he still did it until he passed. So
definitely,
yeah, it's an important moment, that important film, Babylon, definitely, and the great soundtrack from Dennis Bovell as well, who, as we know, was part of Matumbi as well.
That's right.
But also, just to give a bit more Anorak information, he was also part of a sound system called Sufferer. And I used to go and listen to Dennis when he was part of the sound. We used to listen to him in a club called the Metro in Ladbroke Grove back in the day, in my North London days. So Dennis has had a long history in music as well, but he was a brilliant sound system. He had a brilliant sound system. But when he got sort of there was a raid at a club called Burton's, I think it was in Cricklewood, and then after that Dennis got imprisoned and all the rest of it, and so some of that film was based on his life story, is what I'm trying to say. Bit of information.
Yeah, but even Babylon, it didn't get an American release.
Didn't it? Okay.
No, they didn't release it because they said they thought it would flare up racial tension. And it didn't get a release for 40 years. So it missed a massive opportunity in America for Caribbean communities in New York, in DC, in Florida. So that was unfortunate for the film at the time. But I think there were very few films here that capture the Rasta movement or the influence of Rastafari on the youth at the time. I think outside of Bob Marley and his time here, I don't think there were any other quite serious depictions of Rastafari or Rastafari influence.
No, but the very first film that was made by a Black British film director was Pressure in 1975, and that shows an aspect of Black British culture and life at the time. 6 years later, Menelik Shabazz made a film called Burning an Illusion, and again, you could see, if you look at the film, you can see aspects of Black British culture. But you're right, it doesn't talk about Rastafari as such, but it does talk about the Black British experience and the lives that people were living at that time. So they're two very important films. Pressure for being the first Black film, and Burning Illusion for the story from a female perspective as well, which was very different to a lot of films that. There was no other film. That was it. So it was an important film.
So I have other questions now, of course. So if both of you, either of you were going to curate like a soundtrack film about the Windrush generation, what would that sound like?
There's that famous song when he comes off the boat, Lord Kitchener, is it London is a place for me? So I think you have to start with something like that, Definitely London is the place for me as one of the first songs. I think I'd have that as one of the list on the list.
I can't go any further without mentioning Desmond Dekker, another underrated Black cultural singer. 007 and Shantytown. I think you'd have to do it because that would just evoke memories for those who are coming off that Windrush.
And another important song from the era would be Bob and Marcia, Young, Gifted and Black. That is so important at a time when people were being oppressed. So I would say that's quite a powerful film, powerful song as well.
Any others? We only got half a soundtrack. We need like 10 songs.
Okay.
My mum always used to play. Hold on. She always used to play "Oh My Little Cottage in the Grill."
Yes, Tyrone Taylor. Yeah.
Tyrone, yeah. "Oh My Little Cottage in the Grill." Yeah, that has to be on our soundtrack.
Well, I'll leave it to the sound man to go first.
What other tune like? The main Money.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
The Maytone, Money Worries.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's another classic. If we're talking about those times,
I would add, because we're talking about the UK experience as well, the song that really turned me on to this particular band was a song called Back to Africa by Aswad. So I would definitely have Back to Africa by Aswad. That was, for me, a standout track in terms of people starting to think about African culture, and Aswad were very dominant in that mid-70s period. So definitely Back to Africa for me would be a powerful tune to have as well.
And when we watch films like Rockers or Babylon, what strikes you about how they use music to tell the story?
Well, music is so important to the story. You know, you can't have The Harder They Come without Jimmy Cliff's songs or the great soundtrack. You know, it's so important. The film wouldn't be anything without the soundtrack. The soundtrack is so important, and it captures a classic era in Jamaican reggae music. That film, there's so many songs. Any song in that film, is a classic. Every song is a classic in that film. So it's such an important part of it. Had you had a film with no music, which you couldn't do a Jamaican film anyway, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same thing. So it's so important.
And I think if you look at some of these songs, you can get it if you really want it. Jimmy Cliff, that's a hopeful anthem of perseverance. You've got Many Rivers to Cross, again by Jimmy Cliff, which is a reflection on hardship, which a lot of Jamaicans were experiencing growing up in Jamaica. And then the Desmond Dekker tune, which I mentioned, that's a classic rude boy anthem, and that just crossed cultures with what he did. So it just wouldn't be the same. Black film and music, they just go together. And if you look at what happened in the 90s, when a lot of black producers, black film producers came about, you would rarely find a movie that came out that was black or orientated without a soundtrack. You'd have loads of them just coming out, and they'd all have a soundtrack to it, and it just encapsulated the whole vibe and the whole black culture and what we are.
There's one movie that really sums up what you just said. That is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it stands out because of one song in this particular film, and that film is called "Do the Right Thing." And there's a song by Public Enemy, such a powerful, "Fight the Power." I mean, it's a powerful song in its own right. But when you listen to that song in that film, it's such a powerful moment, how you can combine what's happening in the film with the actual lyrics of the song. To me, one of my favorite songs, one of my favorite movies, forever. Powerful, very powerful. And that shows you the power of music and film together. It's such a powerful moment.
So I just continue on what Ian said. I remember being at school when that movie came out, and I'm sure it came out on, was it Betamax, Ian, at the time? And
well, I saw it at the cinema. I didn't see it.
I saw it at school. I saw it because I didn't go to the cinema to see it.
Right. No, I think I saw it at the cinema. I can't remember which cinema I saw it, but I definitely saw it at the cinema. I didn't think I saw it on a pirate copy at that time, but no, it was definitely at the cinema I saw it. But so I don't know about I remember Betamax, but I don't remember seeing it other than at the cinema. And again, that's part of that experience. When you watch a film like that as a collective experience, powerful, because you're all sharing that moment together. So wicked film and wicked music.
So how do you think then that, or what is it about a song or a track that when it's played in a film will play out differently in a dance hall, say, or in a club? What do you think the difference is, or is there a difference?
Well, as just mentioned, The Harder They Come with Jimmy Cliff, it works as a standalone song in a dance, and it works as part of a movie. Do the Right Thing, Fight the Power stands alone as a song, and it stands alone as part of a great film. So I think they can have separate lives. I think they work independent of each other in those examples anyway.
The same as, I mean, if you look at Police and Thieves, when that came out with Rockers, you still play Junior Mervyn now, Police and Thieves, as a standalone selection in a dance. Your revival selection, it will probably be one of the top 20 tunes that you'll probably play. The Junior Mervyn. It's just stood the test of time. 9, 7, 8, what's that? Nearly 40 odd years.
I think Police and Thieves came out in about 76, I think, something like that. I think it came out then. It was 75 or 76 it came out. And that's what, 50, 60 years later? So, you know, powerful film, still standing the test of time. Yeah.
And so how would you say that you would approach scenes, right, where the music, I guess, how do you get the balance where music carries the emotional and cultural weight? Or do you think the way that Black films or Caribbean films are made differently because it's almost like the music isn't the subtext, it's like you have parallel narratives running on screen at the same time? So how do you balance that? Because I don't always feel like in I don't want to use the term white films, in films that are not heavily influenced by say Caribbean culture or Black culture, right? How do you balance those things? Because I feel like with our music and our stories, we've got two not competing, two complementary narratives running in parallel. Whereas I feel like in other films, music's the subtext.
Well, one example I can give you is I did an exhibition of my photographs last year, and I said to the gallery at the time, I don't want to just have my photographs in the gallery and no music. I said there has to be music because my photographs evolved from music. So I said it was very important that there was a soundtrack to go with it. And I think when you have that combination of an audiovisual experience, the power of the images and the power of the music, it moves you. When you listen to certain songs, you know, it moves you. And I think when you get that right and you can combine the two together, you can't go wrong. And I think because we have such a strong culture in terms of music and visuals as well, combining the two, you know, you're onto a winner. You know, although I wouldn't subconsciously say you do it just because you want to be a winner, you do it because you just know it works. You know, it's just a winning combination. And we've mentioned a few films where it just works so well. You know, it's just like, I call it a no-brainer to have the two together.
Plus, we're a very spiritual people as well, I think, you know what I mean? And the music is so spiritual. So when you mix that with the film, it just seems, I don't think I've really seen a film which has Black music in it that has failed to at least hit the mark in some way or form. I rarely see you know, so the music, you say, what? It's just total trash. What's this music doing with this film? It just doesn't fit. I really kind of see that. It's just kind of, as I said, it's just kind of a spiritual thing. Whereas I've seen plenty of films that are mainstream, and I wonder what's going on here. Just hasn't got a clue. Just doesn't connect.
That is so true. Sorry, go on.
No, so go ahead. Go ahead, please continue.
I remember a few years ago. I don't know if you remember this film, but there was a film called Above the Rim, which was kind of like a Black basketball film, and the music on that film was so powerful that I actually went and bought, I think it was a double album. I bought the album because the tracks the tracks that were part of that soundtrack were brilliant. So sometimes you can go and buy music because you're so moved by the power of the music that's part of the film. So Above the Film, classic soundtrack, brilliant songs on there. I advise you to check it out if you get the time.
So what makes a musical moment in a film visually powerful, as well as like sonically rich? How do we get that magic, do you think?
It's just an elusive piece of magic that you just kind of know. You know, you just know this piece of music will go with this imagery. I think it's intuitive. You just kind of know. Maybe it's like a musician dropping a tune and they just know that this song's going to drop. The same way you just know putting this combination together, it's just going to work, really. You know, it's like you know, Tipper Irie and the Colonel just speak. You know, you just know it's going to work. You know, it just works because they got that moment perfectly right. The rhythm track is perfect, and you just know that when they drop those lyrics, it's just going to work. So you just know it's going to work. You just know.
So
I
when
don't know if
you,
there's any magic.
no, but I think when people are creatives and they've honed their talent, what you're describing, or what you're both describing, is an instinct. Ray, you're calling it spirit. You haven't even given it a name, Ian. You're just saying when you know, you know. But
Vibes.
that's
It's vibes.
the type of vibes. It's like an intuition, right? But
Barrington Levy has a tune called "The Vibes Is Right." You know, there's a tune by Barrington Levy called "The Vibes Is Right," and when the vibes is right, the vibes is right. You know, it's just the vibes is right. You know, it's not sometimes something that you can be taught in film school. I think it's just something that you just learn over a period of time, really.
But can't you say that's also about expertise, though? Because even though we're discussing it now and we're using words like magic and vibes and feeling it, I think people that don't have that innate talent or ability, and they haven't honed the innate talent that they have, they may not understand that it's actually quite difficult to achieve.
And then it becomes a flop, you know, or it doesn't work.
It doesn't.
So,
I just,
anyone? No, ignore me.
Peter Andre.
Oh dear, Jeffrey.
I mean, Jaffakan. Yeah. I mean, I don't.
Cool Runnings.
I won't. Cool Runnings. I mean, there's a part of me says there's a place for those films because those films usually do, or that song usually do crossover, and you know it's good for the other audience or some other or orientations to kind of, they like that. It's not as heavy, you know what I mean? But I mean, it's not serious music. It's not music. I don't think Jaffakan's meant to be serious anyway, so that's fine. And I think Freddie Nawaka, who's a director on that, would probably agree with me. He's supposed to be a joker and a laugh, a comedy kind of thing. So okay, I like that. Peter Andre singing "Mysterious Girl." I wouldn't know how to describe that. I suppose it was just an opportunity that he had, and fair play. Somebody bought it. I'm sure that I'm sure that was top 10, if not top 1. If not, it went to number 1 in the pop chart. And it probably did something for reggae music. Maybe reggae music wouldn't want to claim it, but it probably did something for it. The exposure.
I think sometimes when these things are done and there's a level of respect into how it's done, then you can appreciate it. But when it's done by some other artist and it's kind of like a joke business, then I don't really respect that. I have a lot of respect for UB40 for some of the songs that they covered back in the day, because a lot of the Jamaican artists who had recorded those original songs, they only got paid for the very first time when UB40 covered them, and some of them got to live off the royalties for the very first time. So I think it depends how you do it, you know. But certainly people can dismiss UB40 or whatever. But I think I have to remember they made sure that certain artists who were living in poverty got paid for the very first time. Not the same with Peter Andre.
So with films like The Harder They Come, which seems to be a crowd pleaser and a crowd favorite, even Babylon, they use gritty realism. It's the hard edge of some of the experiences that Black people have in impoverished environments. So do you think this visual approach can enhance the musical impact?
I think, just like we just mentioned this Jaffakan film, I think people really understand when something's real and when something's fake. And I think just because you shot a film in Jonestown or Tivoli Gardens doesn't mean to say your film is authentic. I think the authenticity comes from the storyline, the narrative, and the characters in the film. So yeah, you can't just say, well, I've set it in Jamaica and I've set it in a Jamaican suburb that makes it real. No, you still got to have the authenticity of a proper story, and one that gives credibility and respect to the culture that you're representing.
And I think those films that you just mentioned, they're all about something that a lot of people can hold on to because it's a struggle. It was a struggle. It defined a moment within time, within history that a lot of people who were impoverished, whether you were black, white, or indifferent, you would have struggled in life at some point. Many of us. There's only a few of us that grew up who were rich and could navigate. Just going to those West End clubs when they were charging how much money to get in, and we probably couldn't afford it. That's why we had to go down the road and go to the local shubbins and enjoy ourselves there for a much cheaper night out. But it's definitely the connection that it has with what the topic is.
If you want to see an authentic Jamaican film, there's no better film to see than, we mentioned The Harder They Come, but there's films like Rockers. Rockers, if you look at the cast list in Rockers, the music in Rockers, it's real. It's real. That's authentic. You'll see Jacob Miller, you'll see Gregory Isaacs, you'll see Horseman. All these great artists are in there, and that was made in '78. And that was the highlight of the classic era of Jamaican music. So, Rockers. If you want to know about authenticity, go and watch Rockers. And, listen to a great soundtrack, which was, I think, on the Island Records as well.
So, how do you think that Caribbean diaspora filmmakers, or because the guy that directed or Jafakans, I'm not quite sure which country he's from. He's, I think,
Nigeria.
Nigerian guy, British Nigerian guy, right?
Yeah, Freddie Nwaka.
Freddie Nwaka. So how can diaspora filmmakers, right, black diaspora filmmakers, use music and visuals to tell our stories? Because when I saw him and Peter Andre on a breakfast TV show, they said, "Oh, Sizzler said it was all right," and oh gosh.
Sizzler said it was all right. Sizzler said it was all right.
Oliver Samuel said it was all right. And if they told us it wasn't all right, we would have stopped.
That's not a level. That doesn't give a film proper ratings. And also, when Oliver Samuels did his part in the film, he said he didn't know what the rest of the film was. And I'm pretty sure Sizzler would probably say the same thing. If you were to ask Sizzler and Oliver now what they thought of the film, their reaction probably wouldn't be the same.
Okay. So what do you think we can do as creators and people that document the art and create the art to people that are telling variations of our stories? How can we?
It can be done. I mean, I gave an example before of Babylon made in 1980 by an Italian man, and that's a very authentic film. So you can do it if you have proper people working with you who actually understand the culture. And so it's not that films can only be made by people from Jamaica or people from Nigeria or whatever. You can make these films, but you still have to understand the mentality and the culture of a people. It's so important that people understand the culture, and then it becomes authentic. If you don't, then you get found out and it becomes a Jafakan.
I take it you don't like that movie much.
I have to say, I haven't seen it, but I'm only listening to what people have said. Maybe when there's a pirate copy around, I'll see it. But I won't be buying a ticket to go and see it. And I have to have 2 hours spare in my. I have to have 2 hours spare in my life to see it.
What I would say, in defense of Freddie, I've known Freddie a long time. Freddie's been in and around the UK music scene for a long time. He's attended dances. He's released records, or at least a couple that I know. He's been on the hip hop scene. So he does understand the cult. He does understand Jamaican culture and Caribbean culture. I'm talking from I'm not talking from. You're talking from the film perspective. I'm talking about the man that I know and who's grown up within the culture, because he's definitely been he's been a security guard on front doors of things. He's done different roles within the community. So I'm speaking. I know he knows it. Whether or not you're thinking differently about what he's produced as one portion of his film work, it's fine. But I can definitely certify that he's grown up amongst the culture. He's grown up amongst Jamaicans. He's grown up amongst English Jamaicans and a lot of the scene. So I can give him that. I can definitely give him that.
But the big question is, Ray, have you seen the film?
I haven't.
Okay.
But I do want to go.
Interested to hear your opinion if you had seen it, because I haven't seen it either. So I wondered if you had seen it. That's all. Yeah. Because I haven't seen it.
I think there's a difference, right, between English Jamaican culture and Jamaican culture, right? Because we're hybrids here. And I think that, as we know, Jamaican culture is a very diverse culture, ethnically, racially, economically, and everything that comes with that. And I think that learning Jamaican culture in England is very different from experiencing Jamaican culture in Jamaica. And when I'd watched Freddie, he had said, "I'm just so shocked. I can't believe people don't like it." And he seemed so genuine. And I just said to myself, backside, well, why did the man yell? Because I don't understand. If he didn't have any friends from the ends that could help him. And so I just found it rather curious. And so I think there's a difference when you learn a culture on the street or on the road, like how we had to learn English culture, because when we went home, we were Jamaicans. When we went out on the road, we were this other thing, and we had to learn their culture, learn their language. We had to learn how to assimilate. And I think that when others, even if they are Black, do encounter Caribbean culture, they learn it from us on the road. They don't learn it in our homes. So I think a lot of the nuances are missed. And And I often find that when others tell our stories, those are the nuances that you don't see. And when people are so confident that they know, that's when I guess you can get found out.
You can get found out, or you can actually be found to be authentic. But it doesn't sound to me. I mean, I've heard of Freddie, but I don't know him. But it sounds, from what I'm hearing, it's a bit of a joke movie. But I would like to be proven wrong, but I can't comment because I haven't seen the movie.
He would say it's a comedy movie, though. I mean, I think he has said that it's a comedy. So maybe.
It is a comedy, but you know what it's coming like? Do you remember that movie Soul Plane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a Wassera version of Soul Plane. It's like it doesn't even have the budget of Soul Plane. The Soul Plane was terrible. It's that type of. It's not. It's
but
like.
Wasn't that? But it's a classic now. You talk to people about Soul Plane, and it's actually a classic movie now.
All right. Okay. Well, I mean, then they should have got a white Jamaican. There's enough white Jamaicans. They should have got a white Jamaican. What about White Yardie? There's enough white Jamaicans.
It just sounds a bit suspect, really, from all the criticism of the film. But I can't really, as I said, form a proper opinion until I get my pirate copy.
And your 2 hours to spare. So as people who have witnessed the culture, right? Documentation, creation through stills, motion picture, and music. This is a question for each of you. What's one of the moments you could say on or off camera, on or off the sound or the DJ stand that you could say has really shaped your commitment to the culture? What key moments or moment has there been for either of you?
In shaping the culture.
For you, as a creator, as an individual, because I know that I'd imagine. We can do it both ways. We can do one where you just wanted to put down your camera and say, you know what, screw this, we're done with this. Let me just go back to the drawing board and figure this thing out. And then a time when you say, you know what, this is completely worth it. I don't care if no one ever sees my pictures. I don't care if no one ever comes to my dances again. I'm going to play. I'm going to take my picture there. Like, where your lowest point and your highest point for you. And that doesn't necessarily need to be economic or rewards. It can just be something inside you that makes it worth it. Because 40 years is a long time. And both of you ended up thing from places that you didn't originally start. 40 years is a lifetime. People don't even live that long.
Well, I can certainly think. That
is a difficult one, isn't it? Go on.
Well, high points would be going to places like Cuba, making films in Cuba, going to Jamaica, making a film with Usain Bolt. You know, these would definitely be highlights. You know, going to Brazil to make a film about boxing, Brazilian boxing. Those will definitely be highlights for me. Now, I wouldn't really say low points, but I would say going to a place called Siberia wasn't a highlight, but it was interesting. It was interesting. And I kind of understand why people got sent to Siberia, because it's not a place you would voluntarily go to. So I can say Siberia is on my tick list. Greenland's on my tick list as well. But I don't know, highlight would definitely be filming in the Caribbean or Africa. Definitely. It doesn't really matter where. But I think the Usain Bolt film would be one of the top ones. Yeah, definitely. I've done 3 films with Usain Bolt, but the one in Jamaica is probably my favorite.
My highlight probably would be a couple of years ago. We the event All White Cocoa, we took it to Nebworth, and we're probably the first black promoters that have ever done an event in Nebworth. And Nebworth is iconic for Oasis, for it's iconic for there were some other big acts that went there. Oasis, I think. What's that gentleman who died? Queen, my guy from Queen played there, and you're talking about 110,000 people back in 20 years ago that they did that. So when we took Coco there, we had a green space. We put up our marquees. We had 6,500 people. But for my culture, where I come from with the blues dances, you're talking about fitting 50 people in a room with your speaker boxes, with your bass, your mids, your top speaker in there, blaring music to 50 people. And what the hell did you do? Because when you look at rooms nowadays, you really think, how much people used to fit in this little room playing these speakers, turn our music up and beating it till whatever time in the morning. And just to come from there to take my culture to something that they've never done before, and step on the shoulders of promoters that have gone before me that have done big events, but this probably being the biggest for the culture, that was a moment for me, because when you're on that stage and you look right across the people, and then you think, oh, you really did this. You really took it from blues dance to this stage at this location. So for me, that is the most iconic or highest point in my life.
And what about low point, Ray? Did you have a low point? Not Siberia.
Not Siberia. I think it's just general. With anything, especially with sound is very the people within a sound, it's so much beat in your chest, it's so much ego. You have your high and you have your low points. I think every point I had was a learning point, I would say, and I've learned from that in different and various ways, whether it's they're the right people to be around or it's a network that you've created that can help you grow your craft, or to be able to present your craft to St. Lucia, where I've played in. I think I've played in every Caribbean island, from the big one to the small one, and I've been able to visit islands around the world that I probably wouldn't have done if it weren't for DJing. So I'm very grateful for my moment in time and my moment in this space.
And what role do you think that Caribbean music plays in all of its offshoots, whether that be jungle, grime, house, soca, calypso? What role do you think music plays in preserving our cultural memory?
Well, it's the heritage, isn't it? I mean, you don't have Stormzy without Wiley. You don't have Wiley without So Solid and Heartless Crew. You don't have those two, especially So Solid. You wouldn't have had them if it wasn't for Saxon. They were probably the first, you could say, So Solid group, because they were your one-off sound system that had 10 DJs lining up to come and talk lyrics over that version or over that instrumental. And you wouldn't have had that if it wasn't for that culture, and you wouldn't have had Saxon if it wasn't for reggae culture, and you wouldn't have had it if our forefathers hadn't come across on the Windrush in the 50s with the sound system. Because you got to remember, when they got in clubs, the clubs didn't have they didn't have PA, they didn't have sound systems like that. There was big bands. It was all about you know, more like your trumpets and like doing your big bands. When those sound systems come over, so when Ian mentioned Duke Vin and that, they wanted to take their speaker boxes 6 foot tall and whatever else. They wanted to take that into the club and go and play it in the club, to hear a different kind of music, that a different tone of music with a deep bass and everything else, which is the stuff that does move us. So yeah, so that's it. Like, you wouldn't have had it if it wasn't for the Jamaican culture going right back down there. You just wouldn't have got what you get now. It just wouldn't be possible. Garage, jungle's come out of it. You've got the garage that has come out of it, and all of those are big genres of music that have gone on to create income streams for a lot of our people. You know, I go to award shows now for the younger people who are into the music, and it's just completely different, Nadine, from when I was going up. So when I was going up, and you had street teams, and we was with BMG, and we used to go Sony Music, and street teams are the ones that used to service the DJs with your pre-release records, and they used to give us the pre-release to play, and for that they used to tip us by saying, come to this music launch. So you'd have an artist music launch, and like, you'd go there to hear him. So I've heard Whitney Houston, Donell Jones, Jay-Z. Growing up, all those icons that come through the mid-90s, like, we've been there and heard them for that. But you would not have got where we're at with the culture if it was not for that reggae. Most of those garage DJs, most of those jungle DJs, they will tell you that they was in a sound system at one point or another, and they grew up on that sound system culture. Whether they was a box boy, or whether they was following, or whether they used to go to a blues dance to listen, or whether they go to some of the clubs, Phoebe's, those old clubs back in the day where we used to get that, they would tell you that they probably came from there.
I've like Ray, I've been a follower of music, you know, from day one. So I've followed the evolution of reggae music, which has been the primary source of music for me over the years. But at the same time, I think you can't just get stuck in one genre. You kind of evolve as well. Yeah. So it was interesting. I think a couple of weeks ago, there was some post on Instagram, and it was about Shy FX and jungle music. And I thought, wow, that's me. And it was a film that I made for the BBC in 1994. And it was about the beginning of jungle music. And it was Shy FX and somebody else I can't remember his name. And they were recording in the guy's bedroom. That's how many, 38 plus years ago. So I've kind of been, not lucky, but I've actually been following the changes of music over the years. And we did other people like, I can't think of his name. But anyway, lots of different people over the years, really. I've just followed lots of music right through to Afro beats today. But back in the day, I was doing stuff with Fela Kuti. So, you know, I've always been heavily involved in music. So, you know, and I don't just stick to one genre of music. I just love music. So whether it's reggae, bashment, dancehall, soul, R&B, you know, even jazz, I'm there, man. I'm there.
And right. Can I just say, Nadine, that just one of the films that we didn't mention that I would like to give a mention to, because that film had so much classic tracks, reggae tracks on it, was Dancehall Queen. Yes. You know what I mean? That was a film, and if you're talking about hits, that's got hits laden all over it, from the title track, Dancehall Queen, Big Beanie Man, Lady Saw, Sycamore Tree, still play that now. Head's Eye, Mr. Vegas, still play that now. Action, you know, Terry Fabulous, we still play that now. All those are just hits that came out of that Dancehall Queen. And that's probably would you say that was the last kind of Jamaicanish film that kind of...
I think Dancehall Queen came out about 1988, 89, something like that. And I think it was
it was 1997.
97, shit, okay. That's later than I thought. Yeah. But it was made by Palm Pictures, though. Can't think of his name. The DJ, he made the film. Can't remember his name now. Big Audio Dynamo guy. Big Audio Dynamo. He was the director, one of the directors of that film. But no, that captured an important moment in dancehall history. 97, you say it came out?
Yeah,
97. Yeah. Yeah, I remember being in some dances in Jamaica at that time, and dancer was a big moment. Was a big moment, you know. And you sing Yellow Man and so many other people back in the day. Yeah, interesting. 97. I thought it was earlier.
Supercat's my DJ. Just so Supercat's my DJ.
Right. Well, you can't go wrong. The Don Dada. You can't mess with the Don Dada.
You can't go. But I think King Yellow Man still is the king of dancehall. He is the forefather for it all.
Well, he was the big thing.
Zunga.
Yeah. I'm not knocking it, but one of my dreams, right, in life. So everyone I meet in Jamaica that I'm meeting Kasumadi, I say to them, I want a dub plate from Supercat on the Shashamane rhythm. And I say, do you know Supercat? And everyone's got big chat until I tell them what I want him for. So if anyone knows Supercat, I want a dub plate on the Shashamane rhythm.
You got to go to. I think you got to go to New York. I think he's in New York. I think that's where you need to find him.
Well, I need to know some New York people because I want a dub plate from Supercat.
He doesn't really do. I think he's done a couple, but he doesn't really do them. He kind of is one of those artists that doesn't. He sees the virtue in keeping his thing exclusive. So I think there's a couple of big sounds. There's a few sounds.
Rodigan, I think, has got some of them.
Is one of them. Yeah, one of them. I think King Addis might be another one of them sounds over there. Has got it, but not many have got it. And there's a couple Jamaican sounds. The sound that he used to DJ on, which I forgot which one that was, but they've got it. But otherwise, he doesn't do that. He doesn't sell himself for that. He's just not interested. So you're not going to get. I'd be very surprised, Nadine, if you ever got that dub plate.
Do you know what? This is I've got an investment portfolio for my dub plate. Don't watch me.
You're going to need it. You're definitely need it.
Right, I'm going to need it.
Dig deep.
All right. So, there was such a wonderful conversation. Is there anything that you would like to add before we close?
No, it's been great having this conversation, just reminiscing about music and films and back in the day. Really, it's been really good. You know, I've enjoyed the conversation. Really enjoyed it.
I think it's important for you to keep the conversation going because, as you're saying, if you don't tell your story, then somebody else will. And I think we've got to learn that as a culture more. Because when you do ask, people say, no. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to say what I've done. But some of them have been very influential and they've laid the foundations for film directors, for photographers, for musicians, you know what I mean, along the way, and they never get the credit. And it just needs to be shown more. It just needs to be done more. So well done, Nadine.
Yeah, man. As they say, each one teach one, you know. So
teach one, yes.